December 1941. The 1,000 Axis raids on Malta has not brought the island any closer to a surrender. Only 15 miles long, Malta becomes the most heavily bombed target in the world.
The Germans in particular would bomb around the clock, or near to it, as makes no difference, the nights of the full moon. And that could mean doing as many as 6 sorties a day. That is, taking off and landing. The norm was rather 2 a day, because the bases in Italy and Sicily were a good long way away, and it was a fairly demanding flight. It did put very high physical and psychological strains on the crew. German air crew who flew the Malta runs would say that you could hear the engines hammering long after you got out of the plane back at your home base, that your body would be twitching to the rhythms of the plane when you try to lie down and sleep. This took a toll of physical and emotional health, but above all, it was the sense of having to go back day after day after day and do the same thing. This was a good way to go mad, particularly because, unlike the American system, the Germans did not allow for relieving crews and pilots after a certain number of missions. Psychologically, they're poorly equipped for the kind of war of attrition that increasingly, and with nobody really liking the idea, becomes the norm over Malta.
On April 17, 1942, the embattled island of Malta wins a decoration for bravery. King George VI awards the island the Order of the George Cross. But the award ceremony is cut short by the arrival of yet another Axis bombing.
The George Cross is one of the rarest medals in the world, and it was outstanding feats of valor when you were not in the services. Now, King George has always been very interested in Malta, and when he heard that the island was being subjected to so much bombing and privation, he had the very bright idea of giving a special George Cross to the island. And it's the only case, I think, of a medal being given to a piece of territory rather than to an individual.
There are now only 8 British aircraft operating against some 15 Axis squadrons. Malta desperately needs fighter planes to regain control of its airspace. There is not a single British aircraft carrier available for the urgent mission. English Prime Minister Winston Churchill makes a desperate appeal to the United States. Will the response be in time to save Malta? In April 1942, the American carrier Wasp brings British Spitfires into the Mediterranean.
The only way of getting the fighters to Malta was to put them on board an aircraft carrier and get the aircraft carrier within about 500 miles of Malta and then fly them off the decks.
As soon as the Spitfires arrive, German radar alerts the Axis air fleet at Sicily. The Luftwaffe strikes and destroys or disables every one of the planes. On the same day, British intelligence learns that an airborne invasion from Sicily is imminent. Meanwhile, German and Italian troops on Sicily are preparing for the airborne invasion of Malta. Hitler and Mussolini agree on a date for the Axis assault, early June. By now, Malta has been under steady aerial siege for 23 months. The British no longer have airplanes and very little ammunition left.
We had a limited number of anti-aircraft guns, and to the extent possible, it was very hard to get supplies to Malta at all. They were rationed to only fire at bombers, not fighters.
The one resource which keeps the casualty rate low is the island's excellent shelters. Since Malta is made of limestone, the caverns provide protection for the Maltese.
The rock is very soft, and there were a great number of shelters, and they made a great number more. And the Maltese took it remarkably well. They took it just the way that the Londoners took it. And they just put up with every privation with a shrug of the shoulders and said, we'll carry on. But basically the bombing turned the whole thing round. Any thought of giving in after they've been bombed, well, same as happened in London. Any thought of giving in after you've bombed, you don't give in. Bombing has the reverse effect.
In early May 1942, the USS Wasp and the British carrier Eagle return and successfully deliver a replacement squadron of 64 Spitfires within flying range of Malta.
But this time, we'd learned from the errors the first time. The first lot all landed at Takali, which is the fighter airfield, and they were very largely written off on the ground. This time they split them between the three airfields. It made sense. And they had them all in the air in about 15 minutes after arriving.
The Spitfires are refueled and airborne in minutes as German bombers approach. They meet the Junkers and Messerschmitts head-on over the airfield. The Luftwaffe gets more than it bargains for. 37 German planes are lost. The British only lose 3.
This second operation is the turning point of the air campaign because they achieve a victory by blowing away the first 47. Now, here are 60-odd more. And the Luftwaffe pilots and their commanders are beginning to think, what do the Amis and Brits do? You know, pull them out of hats?